Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're kicking off week 2 of the Overwatch League with some prediction videos. Last week was an incredible weekend of games. Let's hope this trend continues. We're going to be seeing 6 new teams across both the APAC and North America divisions play this weekend. We'll also get a better idea of how a few of the teams stand in regards to the rest of the league. So, let's get into the games. Kicking things off on Friday, we've got 2 matches in North America. The first one is expected to be the first toilet bowl game of the season. Paris Eternal versus Vancouver Titans. Vancouver Titans didn't win a game last weekend, although they played 2. I did think they had a few strong spots though, that I could definitely see them take down Paris with. I'm going with a 3-2 to the Paris Eternal however, because I have faith in the Paris roster having more sheer talent than the Vancouver Titans roster to be able to clutch out a close win here. I think if Vancouver comes prepared, they'll definitely be able to take this one away. But I do think it will be a close game, nevertheless. Next up, we've got the Los Angeles Gladiators versus the London Spitfire. One thing to say about the LA Gladiators going into this weekend is that they should win both of their games. If they don't win both of their games this weekend, it's looking very shaky for them. Now, this game against London Spitfire, I'm expecting to be their easier game of the weekend, so I'm predicting a 3-1 to the LA Gladiators. I think there's too much talent on the LA Gladiators roster for them to lose to London Spitfire, but I do think if it came down to a brawl, London would have a chance to take it away with their solid team play and great coordination. This is a big weekend for the Gladiators, as we saw very poor performances from them last weekend. However, they were playing very strong opponents. Now that they're playing who we consider to be slightly weaker opponents, we should be able to get a good idea of where they really stand. Going into Saturday, we start things off by seeing another new team. We see New York, the new team, take on the Chengdu Hunters. I'm predicting a 3-2 to the Chengdu Hunters here, but this definitely could be an upset. New York has that unpredictability about them that means we have no clue where they're going to be. They have so much rookie talent, as well as some great veterans, that there's no way really of pinpointing how good we think they'll be going into their first games. Chengdu, on the other hand, we've seen play, and they're currently at the top of the leaderboards. This weekend will be a great indication for Chengdu if they are still in the Chengdu zone, or if they really are a competitive and top tier team in the APAC region. Not everyone's able to take down this Shanghai Dragons 3-0, so I don't think Chengdu will let New York run away with this one. That being said, however, I still think New York will make it close in a 3-2 to the Chengdu Hunters. Then we've got the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Hangzhou Spark. I'm saying a 3-1 to the Fusion here. Now, we saw Philadelphia play last weekend, and they were very impressive, especially considering 2 of their players had come in very soon before. They had great team coordination, and also, on paper, the solid roster to back it up. Roscoe's Tracer looked phenomenal considering it's not something we really expected from him before this season. And also Carpe was just being Carpe. Toby Alarm was expected to be good, and it was. And the Mano Hotba tank line didn't even let this team down, which many were expecting. I'm predicting a 3-1 to the Philadelphia Fusion here as well, as I don't think Spark is that strong of a team. Of course they have the players, on paper, to be a great team, but a 12-man roster is a very difficult thing to coordinate and turn into success. I imagine this weekend we'll see a lot of switching with the Spark, for them trying to figure out which roster they really should field, which would just give the Philadelphia Fusion an advantage throughout the series. Going back to the North America region, we've got the Houston Outlaws versus Paris Eternal. I'm predicting this to be a 3-0 to the Houston Outlaws, and it should be, considering how good Houston's last weekend was. Houston upset so heavily last weekend, and they're looking to do it again. Paris Eternal is just another opponent for them to really get another win against. I don't think there's much hope for Paris going into this game, unless you're expecting Houston Outlaws to be similar to Chengdu Hunters last season. Unlike the Gladiators, however, I don't think this weekend will learn much about Houston. While we do want to see if they truly are a top team, or if they just had a couple of upsets in their first weekend, I don't think a game against the Paris Eternal will teach us that. 3-0 to the Houston Outlaws is no disrespect to the Paris Eternal, as Houston did look like a very dominant team last weekend, and if Paris can even get a map of these guys, I'll be impressed. But we'll just have to wait and see. Then we've got what I'd consider quite an important game for this weekend, and it might not look it on paper. The Boston Uprising versus the LA Gladiators, and I'm predicting a 3-2 to the LA Gladiators. Now, before last weekend, everyone would have said Gladiators has this in the bag, and I'm still predicting them to win. But there are definitely doubts about them for this weekend. They looked rather poor last time they played, and Boston Uprising definitely could just be another team to take them down. Boston has some great talent, so I definitely wouldn't count them out of this game. And if LA Gladiators lose this, it's looking detrimental for the rest of their season. For a team that were predicted to be top 3 in NA and lose 3 of their first 4 games would be devastating. And if you're a Gladiators fan, that would be the worst thing you can see at the start of this season. This game will help us find out if Gladiators are going to have another disappointing season, or if they really can rise to the challenge. This doesn't teach us anything about them being a top tier team, but it definitely would teach us if they fall into the middle of the pack category. Alright, finally closing out Saturday, we've got a big one. The Washington Justice versus the Dallas Fuel. Now, I'm very high on the Washington Justice. I think they'll take this in quite easy fashion, but I do see Dallas finding a way to get a map off them, so I'm predicting Washington will win this 3-1. This is the first time we see Washington this season. You don't really get teams much more stacked than this one. There is no issue about the talent they have. Mag is possibly the most sought-after main tank coming into this season. Fury, a great off-tank. Decay and Assassin, what a godly DPS line. If Dallas can find a way to capitalise off the weakness of Washington's support line, I can see them taking away a few more maps in this. But I think Washington will have some slick play to shut down the Dallas Fuel's wacky tactics for this weekend. I don't think Dallas Fuel can win this if they play a mirror meta comp. So Dallas is going to have to do some strange stuff if they want to take the win away from a beast of a team coming into this season. We'll see how it goes. This does mean a lot also for Washington. Washington should take this in quite easy fashion. But if Dallas wins this, it's looking very poor for the Washington season, and looking hopeful for Dallas. The first game we have here is the Hangzhou Spark versus the New York Excelsior. I'm predicting a 3-1 victory to the New York Excelsior. I would compare this game to the Fusion versus Spark one, as I think it will go down very similar. Depending on how we see both of their first games go, though, could influence what people think of this match going into it. Hangzhou Spark has so many players, they can definitely find their perfect roster and take down New York using the talent they have. But New York is a bit of a dark horse. They've got many unknowns and many veterans, meaning hopefully these new players are going to be influenced by some wise Overwatch League minds in Jonak and Ivy and really come into their own. Hangzhou Spark, on the other hand, has the numbers. In 12 players, you must be able to find 6 that are good and be able to start. I don't think this game will be close though, and I see New York taking it 3-1. Then we've got the Chengdu Hunters versus the Philadelphia Fusion, and I think this is going to be a big game. Both of these teams looked very dominant coming out of last weekend in the APAC region, and this is a clash of the titans coming out of week 1. We didn't see the wacky playstyle from Chengdu last week that we did last season, which gives you confidence that they're going to be able to take down Fusion playing meta. Fusion, on the other hand, have some of the most gifted players that we've seen in the entire Overwatch League throughout its 4-year history. Both of these teams can play meta, and they'll play it to a very high standard. I think this will be one of the best games we see of the weekend. Not because it will be dominant to one team, quite the opposite. I think this will be a very close game, while maintaining an extremely high caliber of play from both sides. That's why I'm predicting a 3-2 to the Chengdu Hunters. Then we've got the Houston Outlaws versus the London Spitfire. Now, this is similar to Houston's Paris game, but I think London will be able to put up more of a fight. Considering we are currently in a brawl meta, I think London will be able to take a map or two off Houston Outlaws. Houston, however, definitely have the upper hand. I'm predicting a 3-1 to the Houston Outlaws. But if they end up in a brawl mirror, similar to London versus Gladiators, I can see London making this a very close game. Houston won't be able to take this as a free win. They'll still have to work for it, but I still think they'll be able to achieve it if they put up the same performances that we saw from them last week. The penultimate game of this weekend is the Boston Uprising versus the Dallas Fuel. I'm going with a 3-1 to the Dallas Fuel, even though they aren't at full strength still. This is not a lost game for Boston. Boston is going to work to win this game, as in their eyes, it's definitely winnable. Similar to Washington versus Dallas, I don't think Dallas will be able to play meta this game. I think if it does go to a mirror meta matchup, Boston will actually have the upper hand, considering they actually have a hit scan player, which will result in Dallas Fuel having to rely on some strange tactics that the opponent won't be able to expect. We did see some of the Doomfist come out last week from Dallas Fuel, which is something I want to see again. However, they'll have to be careful of a Sombra coming out from Boston, as that was an easy shutdown for the Doomfist last week. There's definitely an opportunity for both teams to win here, but I'm just giving the edge to Dallas, as I think with the extra time without Exi will have just improved their gameplay, and they should be able to take this one away. The last game up is a pretty easy one, Vancouver versus Washington. I'm predicting a 0-3 to the Washington Justice. I don't see any world in which Vancouver wins this game, but I could see them taking a map. Vancouver is just the type of team that if you drop your guard, they'll be able to punish you. You can't think of them as a Season 1 Shanghai Dragons, because they're able to consistently put up that threat of, you know, don't let your guard down, or we will take maps. If we take too many maps, then we're going to win the series. That being said, I don't think Washington will actually throw this game. I don't think they'll do any wacky substitutions like we saw with Vancouver versus Toronto. So I'm going with a 0-3 to Washington. Not much more to be said. Alright, that's it for the predictions. I do want to say something though. In the coming weeks, I might start some actual analytical videos, going over some of the maps that we saw, some of the better map. I might do a video where I look over some set plays from the teams. So comment down below if there's any in particular you want to see, any maps, any games, any plays, and you might see them in the coming weeks. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.